Whenever a new Pokemon game comes out, all of our inner childs come out to play. All we want is to grab this game and rinse it for every penny that it's worth, and in all fairness, this game was set to be an absolute banger. But the real question is, was it? The game starts with one of the most long-winded tutorial sections lasting around 2 hours. Not the standard 20 minutes for a little bit of backstory and shoving you right to where the action is. This isn't necessarily a bad thing though. The game has an awful lot going for it. It seems that they've put together a great story, and it actually seems a little bit more reasonable than, I am now 12, be right back mum, I'm gonna go around the country collecting pets. I do however say this with a pinch of salt, as the content of the games has always been good for me, but the story was always kind of lackluster. So you're a school kid, and the main bulk of the game is essentially just independent learning. Although it still does seem a little bit weird that it's completely unsupervised. I know full well if I was unsupervised whilst I was at uni, I would have not gotten very far. This game also takes into account normal school things that you would have. So during your independent learning section of this game, you can go back into school so that you can have your standard maths lessons, history lessons, and then more appropriate classes like the battle studies class and home economics. Because you've got to know how to cook in order to feed your Pokemon at the picnics, right? This would have made more sense for these lessons to have actually been during the term time, but it's quite clear that this Pokemon school cares less about the school aspect and more about the Pokemon training. Which I guess it kind of does make sense, you know, it's a Pokemon game. But then the rewards for these sections are also a little bit lackluster. That's also okay though, considering that it basically is just a minigame. You mostly just get some XP candies and then a few usable items for the battles and stuff. Could be better, could be a hell of a lot worse though. Anyway, the game is taking a different approach than all other mainline Pokemon games, and it's gone open world, with the whole tagline of you can do whatever you want in it, whenever you want to do it, in whatever order you want to do it, and then they're completely okay with that. Now, whilst that is a great amount of freedom to have, it's still incredibly limited. The game makes out that you don't have to do anything if you don't want to, but that's a lie. I know that we buy these games for the content, so really, you're going to be doing them anyway, but the principle for me still remains. If you don't do the gym badges, then you can't catch Pokemon at higher levels or level them up too much, because they just won't do what you ask them to do, which isn't going to be helpful at all. This is the same mechanic as in most Pokemon games, so again, I completely get it, but in a game where you're saying that you don't have to do it, you're adding a massive crutch to make you actually have to do the gyms. And in the same way, if you don't go and do all the Titans, you can't use your legendaries for all the cool things it can do, like swimming and gliding, and battling, which is kind of cool. But if you can't swim, you can't get to other parts of the map, so it just doesn't really make much sense. All the gyms, Titans, and Star Camps are all leveled before going into the game. So although they've again said that you can do anything in any order that you want, really, it isn't advised. There are some sections of the game which are way too high leveled, and the real issue with this is just that it won't ever tell you until it's too late. In case you haven't seen though, there are some guides online in which order you should probably complete the events, just to make it a little bit easier for you, and all the different Titans give you different abilities, so it's not like you'll get the abilities in a specific order, which is great for if you're doing a second playthrough, because you could just prioritise running off to get the sprint ability, or you could just really want to go for a swim. Gyms, although are leveled differently, they do all give you the same reward regardless of which one you go to. So each one will just level up, making Pokemon easier to catch and make them obey you, but obviously you will get a different badge and a different TM based on the type of gym that you've just defeated. The open world itself is great, in the sense that it is in fact completely open world. They did it before with Legends Arceus, and although that wasn't completely open world, it still felt great to be able to just roam around a different area that was much bigger without being stuck to doing very specific routes. This was introduced in Sword and Shield with the wild area, and I'm glad to see that some of the mechanics do actually work well, and they are incorporating them into other games. But then it leads into this other issue, with the open world, that the Nintendo Switch generally just isn't capable of doing something this big and this technical, which is also incredibly strange, seeming that they did such a good job with Arceus. There's a massive issue with the game just not rendering stuff that's going on in the background, like we have blades of grass that just aren't showing up, bits of the map in the background that just end up as black blobs, and dear lord, the shadows on this thing just seem incredibly messed up. Sometimes they're there, sometimes they're not, sometimes they even take over the entire screen and you have no idea where you are. But that's just Pokemon, I guess. There's also a few more issues with the open world. I understand that Pokemon can be quite small, I really do get that. But the actual size of some of these Pokemon in the overworld though is ridiculous. If you're playing the game handheld, the chances of you actually being able to see them is quite small. There's a point where I was genuinely confused if they had added extra mechanics so that not all Pokemon were in the overworld, and sometimes you might actually just end up with random encounters in patches of grass. This game is filled with so many bugs and technical issues that instead of being called Pokemon Scarlet or Pokemon Violet, we might as well just call it Pokemon 2077, or Pokepunk Scarlet and Violet. I'm not even joking when I say that I've seen games look better on the 3DS. I've had moments where I'm in Pokemon battles, but the camera angle has just gotten so messed up that neither Pokemon is in frame. I understand that for some people this isn't a deal breaker, but I've just spent 20 hours making these little guys learn cool moves, and I'd be damned if I didn't want to see them do a little water whip right in front of me. I've also had moments where the game just kind of cuts to black for a second, which isn't really the end of the world, but it can be incredibly annoying when I just want to run around the open world and collect some stuff. These kind of issues just make the game more irritating to play. It really isn't unplayable, but I will say that it takes away a lot from the game. I think it really is to say something when players give the game a solid 2.9 score on Metacritic because of just how broken this game is right now. It's not even like it's an online game where you're struggling with server issues or internet issues. The game simply just does not run great on the only console that it has been released on. But it isn't all doom and gloom. When it comes to this game, some of the new features in the game are actually really good. The ability to be able to use Pokemon materials which you gain naturally just from battling and catching Pokemon to create TMs that you've already found is brilliant. It really does take away a lot of the issues of them only being singular uses. The new Terra type system is also pretty good. I like the fact that you can turn the tide of a big battle by just changing the type of your Pokemon, or even just boosting the power of one of them to ensure that it can beat them if you are slightly underleveled. The whole map has areas where things are leveled differently as well, which is both great and horrifying. I was battling level 7s, and once I got halfway up this tiny little incline, or a hill if you're a normal person, they were all level 25. It's great that the areas have been blended a little bit so you can kind of go off in every direction, but still a little bit of warning that you're about to have your ass handed to you would have been really nice at that point. The Terra raid battles are also great. These aren't really anything that's actually new though, it's just another version of the max raid battles from Sword and Shield, but in all honesty, if it isn't broke, don't fix it. I always found that the max raid battles were really fun, and when you finally found something that you could Gigantamax, it was great. But in this instance, pretty much all the Pokemon have a different Terra type that you can get. So it's got even more replayability just because you can go over and over again on the same Pokemon just to try and catch ones with different Terra types until you find the one that you are actually going to keep. Then you have the Team Star battles, which are really fun. It's a little bit sad that there's only 3 of them in the game, but they are more than enjoyable. It's nice to see them add a new mechanic into the game that actually does work. I like seeing Pokemon just run out and work together in their team of 3 to wipe out other Pokemon in the overworld, using the new auto battle feature, which, without having me directly involved, is great. Boss fights, however, they're a little bit sus, I won't lie. Like, why are my Pokemon fighting cars? Did Pixar get a cut of this game? Or am I missing something? One of my favourite parts of the online capabilities is back during this Pokemon game as well. The surprise trade. It used to be called Wonder Trade, and if you don't know what that is, basically you send off a Pokemon and you get a random Pokemon back. Sure, most of the time you're just getting a load of Hoppips and Lechonks, but sometimes there's some real gems in there. I normally will send off Pokemon I get that have Terra types I don't think I'll ever use. After all, they can be useful to other people, but they might just not fit into the team that I'm trying to build for myself. Overall though, this game is really fun to play, and it gives you some classic Pokemon game vibes. The real issues with it is just that it wasn't ready to launch. The game needs to be updated to try and create a more stable version. We all know that the Nintendo Switch is very limited in what it can do because of the technology inside of it. But also, if you're making a game you know won't run well on the Switch, please, for the love of all that is good in the world, just release it on a platform that would actually be capable of playing it. Either that or just release a new console, Nintendo, but don't you dare make me pay for the game again. Is this game any good? Yes. Is it worth the £60 price tag? Right now, in the current state, no. Pokemon games rarely go on sale, but if this one ever does, I recommend you pick it up. I would probably say wait for some updates to see if they're actually going to fix all the technical issues though, but at this point, who knows what Game Freak have up their sleeves. Let's just hope it isn't DLC for a game that barely runs at 30 FPS. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Let me know down below what you think of the game. Are you enjoying it? Are the technical issues stressing you out as much as they are for me? Hit that like button and remember to subscribe. Take it easy.